So, welcome everyone in the room and over at Zoom. Today's CSI seminar will be about abuse, awareness, and healing. And I want to start with a disclaimer that I'm not a medical professional, nor am I attempting to diagnose, treat, or cure any psychological or mental issues. And CSI do not replace the care of a psychologist or other mental health or health professionals. So please use your own judgment before taking any actions. And I thought we could all start to just take a deep breath. Because this, and acknowledge that this is a difficult topic to talk about. And I want to thank you all for being here and listening. Awareness about abuse is life-saving information. And you being here today could save a life tomorrow. If anyone at any time feel overwhelmed or like they need to leave the room for a while, you are free to do so. There will be no judgment, and you're of course welcome back in when you feel it's okay. Sharing emotionally difficult things is always your choice, and you should never be pressured into this by anyone else. Abusive behavior is something that is in fact very common. If we look at the occurrence of bullying in schools for students around the world, we can see that it's really common. Going to school as a child, although I myself was definitely not bullied, I still remember very vividly my own first-hand experience of an incident of bullying behavior where I was fat-shamed in front of the class, and this led to me being very uncomfortable wearing certain types of clothes. They became too anxiety-inducing to wear. And I know that I am not alone in this. We are many that can recall such incidences from our childhood. And unfortunately, this is also something that follows us along when we go out and work as adults. Another type of abusive behavior is domestic violence. And looking across a lifetime, 1 in 10 men will be the victim or experience this. And for women, it's 1 in 3. That's a lot of people. We all know more than 10 men or 10 women, and I am one of those women. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. And I will go a little bit into this today to exemplify some things. Another type of abusive behavior is sexual assault, and it's been estimated that around 18% of women will encounter this during their lifetimes and about 3% of men. But this is also based on reported cases. There are many cases that are unreported, and it's common, and we all know someone, and we all might be that someone. It's something that isn't brought up in everyday conversation, but because it is on one of today's topic, I will share that I am a survivor of sexual assault. And I will also share very briefly about this during today. All this to say is that this is a pervasive societal problem. It happens in our homes, in our communities, in our educational institution, and at our workplaces. And anyone could be affected by this. It is not your fault. It can really happen to anyone. There are many types of abuse, and these could be, but are not limited to, for example, physical abuse, such as pushing, hitting, or kicking, or injuring someone bodily. There is also sexual abuse, where harassing behavior or unwanted contact or assault is involved. Then we have psychological abuse, such as name-calling or gaslighting, when someone is manipulating you into questioning your own sanity or powers of reasoning, telling you that up is really down and left is really right and black is white. There is also emotional abuse. Acts designed to humiliate or shame you, insults, isolation from friends, and silent treatment. And both psychological and emotional abuse have this like coercive control element in them, where the abuser decides everything about your life or try to control things about your life. And when you try to resist, it is only met with more abusive behavior. Then we have financial type of abuse, limiting to money access or controlling spending, extortion, and blackmailing. Abuse is mistreatment and harm or exploitation of an individual. It involves behavior or actions that are intended to exert power and control over another person, often resulting in physical or emotional trauma or damage to their well-being. In my mind, abuse was when someone hit you. And in my case, I was not being physically abused. I was not being hit. So I couldn't understand or even conceptualize that there was such a thing as psychological or emotional violence. But knowledge that these types existed, and when I read up on this, actually saved my life. There are many fear responses that we have when we are encountering an immediate threat of trauma. And some that are commonly mentioned are, for example, fight, where we say no, we push someone away and we fight. Or flight, when we avoid a situation and we run away. And I always thought that if someone were about to attack me or like assault me in some way, that I would, of course, I would fight, I would flee or like run away. But when I was 17, it happened to me. It was not a stranger. Instead, very commonly, it's someone that you know. This was someone that I had recently met, and he was much stronger than me. I couldn't fight, and I couldn't flee. And instead, my body just froze. This is a very common response. Our brain is hardwired for survival, and the uncomfortable truth is that we don't always have a choice in how we respond to these immediate threats of trauma. There are also types of responses, for example, the fawn response, which could look like people-pleasing or difficult saying no, flattering others, self-denial, and even defending the people who hurt you. And then there's also something called floppies that's more like extreme response compared to freeze. But these are really like distinct examples, and these types of responses can be mixed and be different in different situations. And just like abuse can be both physical and mental, so can trauma. Sometimes it's talked about and referred to as a big T or a small t trauma, where some examples of big T trauma could be like war or natural disasters, where you have this, you can get post-traumatic stress disorder or depressed or anxiety disorder. And then some examples of small T trauma could be that you lose your job, smaller acts of bullying, maybe your pet dies or emotional neglect, which leads to maybe less severe like effects. But although big T trauma might be more obvious, many small T traumas do add up, and ultimately it is about your own experience of something. Something that is small to someone else might be big to you. So it's all about your experience and how this matters to you. So how does abuse happen? It has a cyclic pattern to it. It starts with the building of tension, and then we have the incidence of violence. After that, there is a period of reconciliation where they say that, oh, I'm sorry, it won't happen again. Or they minimize and say that it wasn't so bad, really. This is usually when they gaslight you into thinking that, well, it was not a big thing. And then you have a period of calm. And we think, okay, it's over now, it won't happen again. And in the beginning, this calm period can be a very long periods. But then as the relationship or situation goes on, these calm periods become shorter and shorter, and the incidences of violence become more frequent and severe. And it's just knowing that it has the type of cyclic pattern, that it is repetitive, it's very good to spot it. It's very difficult when you're in it yourself because you are being manipulated, like brainwashed and gaslight, and to not believing what you see with your own eyes. But when you know these patterns, you have some preventive way to recognize this and get out. So this also follows a normalization process. starting with small things that's easy to rationalize them, and then progressing into more severe and severe things. So I'm going to share a bit of a personal story to exemplify this in a domestic violence scenario. And just like a frog in slowly heating water, we do not notice when the danger is gradually increasing over time. So when I was 18, I thought that I had met the love of my life. He was kind and protective. And looking back, there were moments when he showed that he was jealous, but he always said that it was because he loved me so much. Towards the end, he wanted to know about my male colleagues. And if I got home 10 minutes late, he would cross-examine me of where have I been, what had I done, who had I talked to. One time he unexpectedly showed up here outside of work, and it became quite apparent that he just wanted to check how long it took to take the bus through town to get home. He did not believe me. This escalated further, and he started to threaten that he would kill me if he found any type of evidence that I had cheated on him, something I never did, but he looked everywhere for this evidence. I remember one time I said hi to a male neighbor at the bus station when he was with me and got really angry. He wanted to know my relationship to this individual. The weekend I left him, I was with our 3 kids visiting my parents. I had missed picking up a phone call when he called. I muted it because I really needed a break. I had talked to my parents about how dangerous the situation had become. I wanted to get out. This enraged him, so he unexpectedly showed up at my house. Remember that my mother spotted him outside of the window and said, "Hide." So I hid underneath a blanket, and I was so afraid. He stormed in and angrily demanded to know if my parents were helping me having this imaginative affair with this imaginative man. Luckily, he didn't find me, and my parents were able to convince him to leave the house. Afterwards, I picked up the phone and called for help, and 3 hours later, me and the kids checked into a women's shelter where we lived for about 5 months, and after that, we had protected identity for about 2 years. And that frog in boiling water, that could have been me. It's when you leave an abusive relationship where the highest risk of being murdered. And I'm so thankful to all the people that run these types of shelters and for the women that I met there. They save lives on a daily basis. They drive around in their cars all over the country, picking up women, taking them to locations much farther away. And the women that I met there, they came from all different types of socioeconomic and culture and racial backgrounds. Really, that's when it truly hit home for me that this could really happen to anyone. It wasn't just me. It wasn't something wrong with me. It was just randomly anyone this could occur to. So what could this normalization look like in the case of sexual harassment? Nini Hagman has made a staircase to exemplify this, and I've tried to translate here into English. It starts with compliments given instead of professional treatment, and then escalates into uncomfortable looks or staring. And this further then harassment becomes more physical, but still in a careful way. And then it becomes more obvious and intrusive. Perhaps someone is taking advantage of a situation to get up close. It then can be words and actions that are clearly offensive and threatening, such as kissing someone without consent, or unwelcome propositions, or outright sexual assault. At the highest ladder, everything else is also there, but you have this element of coercive control or coercion, where a threat is included when someone is taking advantage of their higher power position. Inspired by this, I have attempted to put together an incivility at work staircase, because incivility, I think, can also be a way to normalize abusive behavior in a workplace. It would look something like this. It would start with desensitization, where small instances of rudeness and disrespect is allowed and not challenged. And this will then form the shifting of norms, that this becomes the normal way of behaving at the workplace. And then we will start to see breaking of boundaries. It can be like gossip or rumor spreading or other type of harassment or unethical behavior. And also the justification that say that, but that's just the way the leadership style is, or it's just the way it's been like here because it's our work culture. It's nothing strange. And then we have the social influence, which is the group pressure, where we then mimic people of that has influence. And if they are behaving in an uncivil manner, then it becomes more normalized and more accepted. And this will then be perpetuated where you have, where you could see, for example, abusive leadership even tolerated and even celebrated, which would then cultivate a culture of fear and silence. So even though these small instances of rudeness and disrespect might feel like it's no big thing, maybe we do them sometimes, maybe we receive them sometimes when we are tired or stressed. Still, it's good to think about that we reflect about our behavior so we don't take further step up this staircase. And we are each other's working environment. So just by investing some in increasing our own self-awareness around these type of things, we all can make something to contribute to our own, all of us working environment. Abuse thrives in silence. So why do people keep silence and stay in abusive environments? Well, it could be that we don't realize that this is actually abuse. It could be fear of consequences if leaving, such as isolation or financial consequences. Thinking that this is a normal behavior, might have emotional attachments or feelings of shame, lack of outside support, or just hoping that things will eventually change. We get stuck in this, tricked by this cycle of violence that we think it will be better now, but it won't. Another pattern is that abusive behavior usually follows a common manipulation strategy, and it can be acronymed as DARVO. So I put together a generic and fictional example to illustrate what this could look like in a hypothetical work environment. And the situation here is that you as an employee notice that there's an unfair distribution of labor in your group, and you decide to bring this up with your boss. If the boss then utilizes DARVO, they will start by denying your claim. So a little bit of gaslighting here, saying that no, but your perception is completely wrong, and this is nothing to worry about. There's nothing unfair about this at all. The next one is to attack. The boss will then focus on you and suggest that it's actually you that is the problem. Maybe you need to change before questioning their decision. And the last one is to do a reverse victim and offender. And they proclaim that, why are you questioning me? This feels really hurtful. You are actually hurting me. And these types of patterns can be spotted between individuals. It doesn't have to be like the employee boss example. It can also be between groups of individuals or even between countries. It's especially if you look at like news or in the media, and whenever there is an armed conflict, you will see patterns of DARVO all the time. You may have heard this. So how do we break this cycle of violence? You may have heard that hurt people, and often this is in the form of a repetition of what was done to you, you do unto others when it comes to this. But there's another side to this that I really want to highlight today, and that is that heal people. And what does the healing journey look like? Well, time heals all wound is a saying, but does it really look like that in reality? It doesn't. It's much more messy. Both time and healing are relative. It can go back and forth and even around in circles. And as we progress in our healing journey, we also grow and learn new skills and how to handle things in a more helpful way going forward. And this is called post-traumatic growth. The whole Coaching in Science initiative builds a lot on insights gained and knowledge learned by post-traumatic growth, both from small things and big things. Both from small and big T traumas. I also want to say a few words about forgiveness. So for me, forgiveness is 100% optional, and it is not needed to heal. Some pushback on this could be that, but it's not about them, it's about you. You will feel better if you forgive them. But forgiveness is really about accepting the reality of what happened, processing your own emotions until you are able to release them and find a sense of calm about it. It has nothing to do with changing your opinion of what happened, and we do not require another person to find peace within ourselves to heal. We are not at the mercy of someone else showing us remorse or giving us an apology for what they did. My claim is that we have the agency within ourselves to heal. And I think that some things are truly unforgivable, and each survivor of trauma decides for themselves if they want to or are ready to forgive someone. So I would say that please do not pressure someone into forgiving an act that has caused them harm until it can be emotionally and psychologically harmful to that person. The only one I would highly recommend to forgive is yourself when you are ready. So how do we meet survivors? This can also be a bit tricky when someone tells you something that's very hard to hear. So some quick tips is that listen when someone is ready to talk and acknowledge their emotional experience. That sounds painful or difficult, and perhaps inquire, what do you need when someone has opened up to you? And we might get to like, yeah, but I am not a therapist is a very common thing to think. And yes, that's true. In most cases, we are not therapists, but we don't need to be. We only need to be a witness to another's human experience and perhaps encourage steps towards professional help. And with that, I would like to thank you all for listening and for being here today. And we are going to move into some reflections and discussions in the room. And I want to thank people on Zoom also for participating, but we will stop the recording here and leave the Zoom.